As one last act, David should stand up.
Yes, please.
Right. You see, this is yes.
Perfect.
I've got a proper.
Mine just repeats, so it's not.
So
I've got some.
The date bit at the start.
Yeah, I've got some snowmen on mine, but otherwise they'll repeat. Hello and welcome to the Cloud Therapist channel. I'm Richard Simon. This is the Christmas 2024 special edition of Cloud State of Play. We're going to be doing a review of the year in this particular episode. So for this year, if you've kind of been following the Cloud State of Play episodes, we normally kind of do the review in the December episode, but we decided to split this up for this year and kind of do a special episode and bring on some guests as well. We thought it would be kind of expand the conversation and have more disagreements and arguments and stuff like that. And as I said in the previous episode, the December episode, which you'll be seeing soon, hopefully, giving Paul a little bit more work to do as well. So there you go. That's the extra bit there. Okay, so
you're in check rather than just one.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Okay, so I will let for this episode, I will let the guest do an intro for themselves. So, Paul, if you don't mind giving us a quick intro to you, please.
Okay, hi, Paul Bevan. I'm the Director of Research for the IT Infrastructure Practice at Bloor Research.
Fantastic. David?
Hi, everyone, and thanks for inviting me along. I'm David Terrar. I'm the CEO of a newly formed not-for-profit trade body called Tech Industry Forum that has grabbed the Cloud Industry Forum, and that's the core of what we're going to do and do next.
Fantastic. Excellent. Well, welcome to you both. Yeah, let's have a look at some of the stuff that we wanted to review for the year. So I think in the previous episodes, the Christmas episodes or the December episodes that we've done, we've had kind of categories. So Paul and I have kind of gone through a number of categories. So we decided we'll kind of continue with that tradition, if you like, for this episode as well. But Paul and David and myself are going to kind of come in and out of a lot of the categories and talk about various things as well as we go along. So the categories are there's actually 5 categories normally that we talk about, but we added a 6th one for this year, and you'll see why in a minute. We'll discuss that as well. So the categories are, number 1, mergers and acquisitions. So a bit of M&A going on. The second one is major cloud outages. We always love that one to kind of just mention some of the culprits for the year. Number 3 is tech innovation. So this could really be anything: hardware, software, combination, something interesting that the guys have seen, maybe something I noticed somewhere at a event, conference, whatever. Anything like that. It's kind of looks innovative, looks different. That seems to be kind of been trendy and happening right now. And then number 4 is the cloud winners and losers. This is kind of really focusing more on the cloud players, whether it's public, private, hybrid, whatever. And actually just seeing kind of what's been going on in that space, what's been some of the sort of things that have happened, and who's kind of really seems to be winning, whose strategy kind of seems to be going forward positively and who's not. And then number 5 is the tech updates and interesting solutions. So again, anything that we've seen that kind of seems to be an update to something that's already existing, or any interesting sort of solutions that have come out, new announcements, press releases, whatever that we've done as well. That's the 5th one. And the 5th and new one that we've added for this year is GenAI. So it's a kind of a runaway success in the AI, ML, generative AI, LLM kind of space. That's the 6th category for this year. I suspect that will probably get adopted and become a standard category going forward. I think anybody's repealing anything in regards to their AI strategy, whether they're an enterprise or a vendor. So I think we'll probably be adopting that going forward. Okay, so gentlemen, let's get cracking with the first category. So the first category is the mergers and acquisition. I will let you maybe come in first. I've got some information around a few that are on my list. But I thought it would be, yeah, cool maybe to have you guys come in. So David, if you don't mind, maybe starting first, if you
Okay.
have anything.
Well, I mean, the ones that kind of pop out are things like HP acquiring Juniper Networks for a lot of money, $14 billion, I think it was. My first kind of reaction to that was HP buying Juniper, but obviously the whole kind of cloud infrastructure, including network, is a core of what they're transforming themselves to try and do. So when you think about it, it becomes more sensible in my terms, anyway.
It's interesting to see how it sort of marries together between the Aruba side of HP and the the Juniper Network side in particular. What the future for Mist AI, is that going to clash with Aruba? How are HP going to handle that? And my take generally on these is that culturally they're quite difficult to pull off, and particularly competing products. So I think it'll be an interesting. I mean, you're absolutely right, David. I mean, this was very much around the sort of cloud networking, particularly inside their data center. I mean, they're inside data centers, so it's the networks inside data centers, inside cloud data centers, and wherever. And HP obviously think that they're going to, get some scale here with going along with Juniper, because Juniper are, but we'll see how that plays out. I mean, it makes sense if they handle it properly.
Yeah, I don't really have a great deal to say about that one. I think I'm slightly cynical and kind of, what's happening in that space, and also attached to Cisco very early this year. Actually, it was announced late last year, and I think it completed either in December last year or early in January. Was the acquisition of Isovalent as well, the guys who make Stellium. So this was a very interesting thing, and actually something that I predicted, because I was talking to my friend at Cisco earlier last year and saying to him, "You guys need to look at Isovalent. You may want to wonder actually about acquiring them." And obviously somebody was looking at, maybe it was even Cisco was actually looking at my WhatsApp messages. Who knows? And they clearly went off and actually did that by the end of the same year. So yeah, so that was the other acquisition. Now I think this is kind of, Paul, David, it's kind of a juxtaposition with the Juniper one, because Isovalent is kind of very much in the eBPF cloud native, Linux kernel. Paul, you and I think have covered and done discussions around it in previous episodes and what have you. I've spoken to Liz Rice from Isovalent in regards to that a number of times as well. More of that content, by the way, dear audience, is coming out on the channel. So yeah, how do you kind of, and Paul, you mentioned Aruba. So how do we kind of square the Juniper and Isovalent thing?
Well, I think you sort of hit the nail on the head, really. Juniper is very much around inside the data center. Valent and some other things that Cisco's been doing, we'll come back to maybe at a late stage, are very much aimed at how do I handle the cloud network? How do I handle that whole public network, cloud network side, as opposed to, how do I make the internal data centers of cloud providers and enterprises work better from a networking perspective? So I think they are mutually exclusive areas. HP are not suddenly going to get themselves into a cloud networking capability by buying Juniper, that's for sure. Cisco are putting together quite a collection of buys, and in fact, one of my mergers and acquisitions, which again I think was mentioned late last year but didn't close until January, February, will come up in a minute. But Cisco are sort of buying companies left, right, and center, very much as part of a sort of you know, control, ultimately sort of be the sort of leading player from a sort of legacy is the wrong term, but they're swallowing startups like iSurveillance, but they're trying to build out a capability outside the data into the public networks. I think they see that's where they're trying to go. So yeah, it's an interesting. Again, iSurveillance. The positive for iSurveillance, I think, is that Cisco's track record, if you look at Meraki, for example, is to keep things fairly arm's length for quite a long time. So there isn't a sort of sudden, all right, I've got to integrate them closely into the Cisco world. They seem to leave them to their own devices, and Thousand Eyes have found the same thing, that they've been left pretty much to their own devices.
So
I can chip in something.
Yeah.
I think that's going to help it work better because I mean I know HPE well and Cisco quite well. I don't know Juniper or iSurveillance that well, but it strikes me that culturally both those two organizations are very different from the organizations they're buying. So irrespective of how sensible the technical argument sounds, they've got a hell of a job to do to actually properly organize that merger, and actually keep maybe Cisco's approach of keeping them at an arm's length for a period is absolutely the right one.
Yeah. I mean, I can guarantee you that there's a cultural difference between Cisco and iSurveillance. I can't speak for Juniper and the sort of the HPE, but I was just kind of interested in the differences there, because Cisco to me, again, sounds like they're kind of doing what VMware was doing a few years ago, which is, on a shopping spree and buying everybody left, right, and center. As to whether it's going to work, we saw that didn't really work for VMware. Looks what happened, and look what's happened there. Yeah, it's interesting. I think the only contribution that Juniper has made, as far as I'm aware, and please correct me if I'm wrong, drop some comments on this, is Open Contrail in that sort of open source space. I think that's the only thing that they've kind of really provided. It's kind of a software-defined network type of thing that they've done. Okay, HashiCorp, IBM acquisition of HashiCorp.
That was on my list, I must admit. Yeah, along with Cisco Splunk, but we'll come back to that one. Let's do IBM and HashiCorp first, because I know that's quite one of import for you.
Yeah, well, no, go ahead. I mean, I've got a few points on it, but yeah, you go ahead.
IBM seem to be splashing out money left, right, and centre, and we've seen things like Instana over the past few years. We've seen, various buys from IBM, and you wonder what synergies they've actually managed to get out of them. I mean, and you sort of lose sight of the companies they buy without IBM ever making waves, if I can call it that, in the sort of newer areas that these companies potentially should have taken them into. It's almost as if, they're on a buying spree to make sure they don't lose any more of their customers.
Yeah, and what was the Aptio? I think you and I covered that recently.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, they've got so many bits and pieces, taking HashiCorp to help them orchestrate all the bits and pieces they've got, and using Terraform, in sort of innovative ways to orchestrate how they pull together some of the bits they've got. Again, makes sense, but as we've said with HP and Juniper, culturally so different, and we've already seen, did the HashiCorp chief exec jump ship the other, recently? Has he left? And therefore, what's the direction going to be, and how are IBM going to play that one?
Yeah, I think that was in late 2023, and it was kind of a preamble to the acquisition, I think, and also the HashiCorp's license change as well to the business service license, or whatever it's called, Bustle, the BSL license of HashiCorp's Terraform as well. So I think all of that was kind of preamble to the acquisition, and I think you and I kind of hinted on this in previous episodes, but I don't think we covered actually the IBM HashiCorp sort of acquisition itself. We covered in the, I think the August episode, HashiCorp had a state of strategy survey out that they've done with Forrester Research. So we covered that one. And I think we may have actually just talked about the acquisition a little bit, but it was mostly about the survey. David, what's any thoughts from you about IBM and HashiCorp? Oh, we may have.
I mean, it's a career in tech at IBM as a systems engineer and then a sales guy a million years ago. And so I'm always intrigued with the steps that they make. And occasionally they need saving. Interestingly, I went to an IBM event about 3 months ago that was kind of around some of this, and actually the strategy comes across very coherently and very sensibly. So I'm hoping this is a good step for them, and we'll be kind of seeing more evidence of IBM Cloud and what they can do with AI, and if HashiCorp helps them orchestrate all that stuff and make it work for their customers, and that's I think that's good news for because obviously I have a soft spot for them in my heart.
One thing that's interesting, and I think I've mentioned this in previous episodes, is in the old days, it used to be IBM was famed for its marketing rather than its product strengths. And I've related stories from my Burroughs days of being at a dinner party with loads of IBM systems engineers who made great fun of me until they'd had their fun and then started to have a serious discussion that said if they put Burroughs technology with IBM marketing, the rest of the world could pack up and go home. Well,
Yeah.
that was in the mid-'80s, so I mean, shows my age. But IBM have done the reverse now. I think they, like you, I've been to IBM briefings, and from a strategic point of view, it sounds great, wonderful. They're going to put all this together, and then you never hear any more about it. From a marketing perspective, you don't see any change in I say market performance, market perspective. It just seems to have been swallowed in there, and nothing happens, which suggests, culturally, when they get inside, yes, the strategy sounds good, but the inertia within IBM and its multiple divisions and its, different sort of groups fighting each other. And fighting each other is probably unfair, but you know what it's like in a big corporate where they protect their own sort of product fiefdoms. Just seems to slow everything down, and that's where the cultural issues become a real issue, because for a HashiCorp that moves quickly in that sort of environment, to suddenly be in an IBM one where there are layers and layers of decision making. You've ever tried to get a decision out of IBM if you're trying to sell to IBM, it takes forever because there seems to be another person in the loop all the time. So that's my concern about it, and the HP one is exactly the same. You just think, how are they going to meld these cultures together and actually move a bit faster?
Do you know, your thing about the sales and marketing being kind of in charge. My experience was that actually it was R&D was driving the IBM corporation, and whatever they threw at the sales team, they had to kind of sort it out and sell it as best they could. And I imagine that's still going on, but I see some of these recent steps as a much more positive thing compared to the complete screw up of their SoftLayer acquisition when they first tried to get into cloud services, which I think they completely got wrong. And it's interesting to see these steps that they're making. And the Cloud Industry Forum's research paper, March 2024, suddenly in terms of cloud services, IBM came either fourth or third in our survey in terms of what was installed, which I think surprised me a little and highlights the fact that maybe they're doing the right things.
Interesting. Okay, so the other one, which I think completed last year, is just very quick points on this. So I think we've covered this quite a lot in previous episodes, but its effect kind of seemed to spill over into 2024. Was the Broadcom acquisition of VMware. So a whole bunch of stuff started happening this year. The disbandment of VMware's channel partner program, the deprecation of the free hypervisor from VMware. I think a number of people were made redundant by Broadcom from the VMware team, asking all the VMware staff to come back into the office 5 days a week, and all sorts of shenanigans going on in that space. So just briefly, one sentence maybe from you, David, and then on to you, Paul, as well, in regards to that.
In truth, I don't know enough about how successful or not the acquisition's been. It's interesting. I'm Joe Bagley is one of my kind of to do calls, and I've not got around to doing it. And I must actually talk to the guy to see how it's all going and whether the merger. It's frustrating also from my point of view in that both Broadcom and VMware are lapsed members of the forum, and I need to talk them into coming and rejoining too.
Right, interesting. Paul?
Good luck with Joe, because he is resolutely upbeat and positive, I think, whatever. So you're not going to get any sort of negative view about.
You may well be right.
From Joe, and he's a great when he stands up and speaks, but it is all complete positive. I mean, I think in a word, I think the jury's out. I think mostly it's a lot of the things that have happened that you've alluded to, Richard, are very negative, but there's a great product in there, and if they can sort of move past, I mean, and they talk a lot about value, trying to minimize the impact of the increase in subscriptions that they've slapped on people. So I think there's a lot of negatives, but there's some really good product in there, and I think if they can just get past that, and there was some evidence, and I think Richard, you and I talked about it, the fact that they were prepared to do deals, I think, at times with some of their customers to get so be a bit more pragmatic. But certainly if you listen to Hock Tan, then he's a fairly blunt, aggressive, unforgiving type of character. So it'll be interesting. So I think the jury's out, but obviously there's plenty of warning signs there, plenty of flashing yellows at the moment.
Yeah, I think for me it's the and again we covered this in the last sort of few episodes. So again, I'll drop links to all of this, by the way, in the description of the video, so do check that out. But it was I think the summit or whatever that you attended, Paul. You were giving a report on that recently.
Yeah.
And it was kind of very much a push for, was it private cloud and VCF?
I mean, they've pivoted away from any idea of public cloud. That's very much a private cloud approach. Oh yeah, absolutely private cloud. But then of course, they're pushing the repatriation story like fury. So.
Yeah, and no sooner had Broadcom kind of, like I said, some of those effects had spilled into this year. AWS was the first one to bail out of the VMC, the VMware Cloud sort of thing, which they only signed a few years ago with VMware, but clearly not a viable thing for them. So
OVH Cloud got on the wrong end of that too, and they took it out there, so and then really didn't get any support from VMware.
Yeah, I mean, AWS spun it as we're really gutted that we're not having to, we can't sell VMC anymore. It's like, yeah, right, okay, we believe you, AWS.
I mean, just one last,
I lost you there. Carry on.
Missed is just one last quick plug for Cisco Splunk as a merger during the year, right at the start of the year. And again, it's Cisco on a buying spree. The weird thing about the Cisco Splunk thing is that Splunk have got so many solution sets that already cross over with what Cisco do. So if you look at App Dynamics, Splunk have their own APM type.
Yeah.
You think, what's going on? So sometimes you despair. You think, are they just trying to bulk up the business? I mean, I know they want the data practice as much as anything else. They want the data ability of Splunk rather than but there are, for customers, there must be well, hold on a minute. Is it going to be Splunk's APM, or is it going to be App Dynamics, or and so I just I can sort of see some of the the rationale around getting a better data handling capability, data analytics capability that Splunk brings, particularly with the amount of data being captured, in any network management or network environment, and being able to analyze that. Splunk gives a new, but it still was a strange one for me. I must admit.
Yes. Not in a million years, but I managed to do the isovalent one, but not the Splunk one in terms of predicting that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we've done the M&A section or category well enough. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff, and yeah, if you guys think of anything else, drop us a comment in the video. Let us know of any other ones that we may have missed. Okay, so on to major cloud outages. I see Paul smiling already, and David, you as well. So I didn't kind of pick up on any huge ones. I think there were a few that kind of rattled throughout the year, and kind of I summarized some of those, and I'll maybe kind of list those out in a minute. But David, what was kind of anything that you picked up on in terms of outages and stuff like that around cloud?
Well, it's not a cloud outage, but obviously it's the CrowdStrike thing has to be talked about. And although that's only kind of like a faulty update, the implications of it across the industry, and and how it highlighted the totally interconnected supply chain world that we're living in now, where something somewhere can have a ripple effect that can actually cause thousands of flights to be cancelled, and huge kind of outages for different firms, and the losses and such like. But then surprisingly, how the fact that CrowdStrike seemed to have actually because they were open and transparent very early on about what was going on, they're actually recovering quite nicely from the sort of reputational damage that might have brought down another firm.
Yeah. Paul?
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right on that one. I mean, there's a learning for vendors from that point of view of being, open and transparent about it. Yes, the absolutely interconnected nature of stuff, the supply chain is, and so I think there are some learnings for enterprises that says, wherever this happens, you need to build resilience into your systems. And I think where we've seen the biggest impact is where companies, enterprises, companies, public sector, or whatever, have not had systems that are particularly resilient. And we've seen the EU DORA Act and sort of UK equivalents coming in to provide, certain like financial services and sort of critical infrastructure has to be resilient. But I think everybody needs to think about the resilience and beware of vendors with software which is works inside the kernel, I think, is probably.
Yeah. I think Microsoft definitely needs to look at that. You're right, David, in terms of that it wasn't a cloud outage, and unfortunately, some unscrupulous journalists and so on that I picked up reports from try to blame it on cloud, and that I thought that was just really not very professional, shall we say. That's my diplomatic response to that.
In fact, I absolutely agree with you. And in fact, if you look at, the best sort of info on outages in cloud or the public internet is either, Thousand Eyes, they do an internet report and they do a cloud networking report, and they've got a blog that analyzes every outage. And Cloudflare, I think, do something similar as well. So, it's useful to get, and to your point, yes, there are regular outages, but they usually only affect maybe a region or a service. And the thing, and this is similar to CrowdStrike, is that if you look at the reports from Thousand Eyes particularly, you see that the majority of them, almost around about half of the outages are caused by configuration changes and software updates. So the actually underlying infrastructure is pretty robust. until a ship drags an anchor across the deep sea cable, or
Yeah.
one I looked at, Worldline, the financial services payments company, had problems in sort of parts of Europe because the local water company was digging up a trench somewhere and managed to cut the lines to the data center. So there are those, but the vast majority of things that go on are usually configuration updates that are, again, if you look at the sort of outage times, they're anywhere from minutes to a couple of hours. There's very few that you get more than a couple of hours, and almost none. I mean, Microsoft probably had the worst one of the year with in January with the Microsoft 365 services that were out for quite some time. But again, those were software issues. But there was also, and this is, I think it was the same part of this, was DDoS attack. So that's something else that, I wonder whether some of these outages are being caused by various types of hack.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I think for me, it was at least for the CrowdStrike, where cloud could have come in, and certainly it had the capability to do so, was the recovery part of it. So Paul, you and I think, covered it in the August episode, which we talked about it. There's also, I think, a specific unfiltered episode as well, guys. So have a look at that on the channel, where we cover the CrowdStrike outage quite extensively. So yeah, I thought that cloud would have been able to help with the recovery aspect of it, but clearly organizations are not taking advantage of that. So there's no kind of VDI in the cloud that was used, or at least not everybody was using that. Maybe those who recovered earlier, and Paul and I touched on that, I think, in the August episode, where we said, oh, actually, some companies did, managed to recover quite quickly, whereas others struggled and, called in all the troops on the weekend and, to the usual, floppy disk or whatever, swapping, whatever the equivalent is these days in the data center. I would have thought it would be like, again, Pixie boots and wake on LAN and stuff like that, which is my kind of period of sort of understanding those things, where you have to kind of make a core change to the image that you have on desktops, laptops, or whatever, EPOS machines and so on. But I don't know if they still do that. And this was so like, I still have an open question in regards to that, whether that's actually something that enterprises still make use of these days. I really don't know.
But also, I came across one. OVH Cloud had an outage in Frankfurt, I think it was, and they had sort of provisions in place to switch to Amsterdam.
Right.
But of course, then they're going away from their own networks into public networks.
Yeah.
And they use changes to be border gateway protocols and switch it somewhere else.
Yeah.
And therefore, you could see that while they managed to do that, and it was actually quite a short period of time when there was no capability, there was still degraded ability, at the end of that, because that's not as, yes, there was a level of resilience, but actually it didn't deliver the same quality. I mean, they fixed the problem pretty damn quickly in that particular case, but it was interesting to see how they'd automated switching, to another, through but the border gateway routers or protocol actually got swamped by what happened and slowed it down. So again, there's all those sort of. I just think it's remarkable that with everything we've been talking about, that the outages in the cloud, particularly the public cloud, but also the public internet, are as low and as lack of impact that they have. We are, I think we're lucky to date, but I think that luck is as much down to the ability of the providers to provide a really secure and reliable service, and that some of the enterprises might struggle if and might be the cause of problems as we go forward.
Yeah, I mean, I'd hate to see a report about the number of outages in data centers. That'll be interesting to see, but it'll be.
I didn't have
It's,
time. There's an
it's going to be a disaster to look at, I
uptime
think.
report that Uptime Institute report that needs looking into that may actually give some more on
Yeah.
that.
Okay, so let me rattle through some of the ones that I picked up on very quickly, and you can feel free to comment on these as well if you like. So apparently in February, AT&T had a massive, significant outage that was due to an equipment configuration error, apparently, so causing US customers, sorry, US subscribers, to be knocked out for about 12 hours or so. Verizon in September, so again, there was a service disruption issues with their network. Microsoft had one in July on Azure and Microsoft 365 services, impacting lots of users in that. Salesforce had one in May. Salesforce, again, seems to be having it pretty much every year, but there was a service failure affecting its users. And then Facebook and Instagram, yay, I don't use either of those. I'm okay. As an outage in March. And that affected over 11 million people, reported that one as well. Yeah, so I mean, clearly it's not a kind of a. I think a lot of people have focused on CrowdStrike, and as we said, incorrectly kind of blamed both Microsoft actually and the cloud as well.
One of the things that, I mean, you brought up Salesforce there, and I think, there've been a number of instances of where SaaS providers have lost their service. But that's as much down to them and the way in which, they put their systems together as it is to the cloud. Yes, you'll say SaaS is a cloud, but, if they're putting it in a colo data center and they're using their own networks, how much of a cloud really is it? It's that sort of approach. And when it goes down, they tend to have less options for rerouting or putting to another data center. I think it's interesting. I mean, the one has escaped our attention. January, Oracle had quite a major outage of OC in January as well. So yeah, they all get them. If we think we're going to go through a year, but actually the report from Thousand Eyes suggested that actually the overall level of outages was slightly down this year. So, which is good news.
Yeah, excellent. Hey, if you are enjoying the content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That would really help me out. Thank you. Okay, so this was tech innovation. Again, I'll let you guys kind of come in and give me some of your sort of findings for the year. I've certainly picked up on just a couple of points which I thought were interesting, so I'll bring those in. But maybe Paul, we can start with you.
Well, I'm sort of mildly disappointed, I think, in tech innovations this year.
All that AI stuff, Paul. It's just, I don't know. You're just never satisfied.
You said to me in 2022 or 2023, you'd have gone, "Oh, AI," and we'll come back. We've got a whole section on AIs. But if you look at most of the areas I get involved in terms of infrastructure, it's been about optimizing stuff. Yeah, okay. I don't call that innovation. That's just general making things better. Getting your chips to run fast.
Let me ask you something. Did you and we did? I did a review of the Cloud Expo show in London this year. So again, that's on the channel, by the way, guys. If you're watching and interested in that, have a look at that video. But was there anything coming out of that? Because I didn't see, and certainly my guest Pedro Baracha, who was on the review with me, we didn't see a huge amount of innovation from the data center side of that. And that really is a great place to kind of go and get, sample the atmosphere and see what people are talking about. There was kind of, the sustainability thing, I think, was there, but not a great deal more in terms of innovation. But what's kind of your take on all that?
Like you, I went around there and you look at cloud and a lot of it was about cloud cost optimization, FinOps and all those sort of areas. as I said, there wasn't. It was incremental improvements that you saw,
Mm.
or people trying to optimize what they'd already got. I didn't see anything that suddenly made me sit up and go, "Oh my goodness me, that's interesting." There were amendments, there were enhancements, there were upgrades, but nothing that would make me jump and say, "Hey," and it's sort of, where does quantum sit? Where is AI sitting currently?
Mm.
I mean, one of the things that interestingly I looked at was what's the level of investment funding going into AI and into quantum.
Mm.
So the level of funding going into AI this year has reached, even at the end of Q3, so not the whole year, has reached 55.3 billion
Mm.
American investment.
Huge. Yeah.
Huge. And that's up on the full year figure of last year. So it's already exceeded last year's full year figure. Quantum is growing, but it's only 1.5 billion, so
Mm.
it's a long way to go. So clearly there's a lot of investment going in, but I think as we've talked a number of times in Cloud State of Play, and we've touched on the whole AI piece, is that people are now casting around for what are the best use cases.
Mm.
And I think if we were to have this discussion again next year, we might see something really different around business process optimization, business process automation. You might see some real changes coming out through algorithmic trading or stuff going on in medical health. A lot of stuff in the early phase, using the existing tools. So I was sort of focusing and thinking, what's been new from an innovation point of view, from a technology viewpoint, and I haven't really seen anything startlingly new. It's almost like they've got their hands full trying to work out what the hell they've got.
David, what's been interesting for you in terms of innovations and stuff this year?
It's interesting because I mean I agree with Paul in terms of it's not been a year where we've had major eureka moments. I mean obviously it's our second year of generative AI developing, and there's been some fascinating things that where the models have got more sophisticated and multimodal, and they're handling text and images and audio and video simultaneously. I saw someone talking about their book the other day, where they'd fed the PDF of the book into a tool that I've forgotten the name of, that's a Google tool, and it had created a kind of like a 10-minute video podcast of
Notebook LM, I think.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. Notebook LM, and it's stuff like that. Truly is quite amazing.
Yeah.
And it's good to see advances in quantum and the potential realization of that. Some of the things that have been more interesting to me during the year is things around sustainability. OVH Cloud was mentioned. They're a member of ours, and I mean they've done some amazing things. And we were at the that cloud event where Leaf Cloud and Green Cloud were talking about their approach to sustainability, putting data centers next to things that need the heat, and providing the kind of excess heat from the data center to a housing estate or a hospital or whatever. Those kind of innovations around sustainability have really intrigued me, because that's a huge problem that we're going to have to deal with in the coming years, and we're not doing enough. It's good to see the likes of Leaf Cloud and Green Cloud and OVH Cloud doing stuff in that direction.
Yeah, so I actually agree with you, and okay, the one I've seen, which is this whole thing around liquid cooling in data centers. It's very funny as an old mainframe hack. You think IBM water cooled data centers that go back to the sort of mid-70s.
4084 Qs.
But this is a very different technology these days. But if you look at what's happening with AI data centers, I saw figures that said if you use normal air conditioning units in data centers, you'd have gale force winds inside there. The noise and the wind would be so great in an AI data center. It's not. It's sustainable for the humans in it, let alone the ecology of the world. So liquid cooling, either full immersion liquid cooling
Yeah.
or direct-to-chip liquid cooling is coming, and AI definitely needs that.
Yeah, and I think or the event, David, that you were referring to was the Clouded Summit that you and I both attended. So again, guys, look out for a review, depending on when you're watching this. Look out for a review that David and I have actually done about the Clouded Summit, and I'll get all our views on that video. So that should be either out or will be coming out soon. So depending on when you're watching this.
With some
Excellent.
of our thoughts on repatriation.
And our thoughts on cloud repatriation and sustainability, which kind of went in the wrong direction anyway. But yeah, we won't spoil that for you guys. We'll let you guys kind of comment on that. Okay, so one of the things I picked up on for this year, and this was from the Open Source Summit, which I attended in a couple of months ago now in Austria. So everybody kind of gathers around. This happens, I think, in both. There's a North America and there's a European kind of one. This time it was Vienna. I'm not sure maybe they swapped the years. I'm swapped the location, so rather I'm not really sure. But anyway, this one was in Vienna. And one of the things I picked up on off the back of another sort of thing that I was doing, which was kind of moderating a talk for a bunch of people around eBPF. So that's actually on the open source foundation, or the Linux Foundation's Open Source Summit YouTube channel. So again, I'll maybe drop a link of that talk that we did. But the thing that I picked up on was profiling. So this was actually quite interesting, and it seemed to kind of come in, it seems to focus on two areas. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Drop me some comments in the video and let me know. But it seems to be kind of coming in at both what APM I would normally expect APM, application performance monitoring, to be doing in that kind of monitoring the application performance, resourcing, things like that kind of space. But also not in the FinOps space, but certainly in the cloud cost optimization space. So we're kind of focusing, quite deeply into, a particular area. So in this case, the application, and seeing whether the application is running in a, I don't know, sustainable, optimized way, if you like. And is it wasting resources? Is it dumping, log files, into S3 or something like that, and then it's kind of growing your S3, space and estate, and then that's causing you more cost and things like that. So that's that kind of very low level, focus on utilizations, whether it's a virtual CPU or a physical CPU, the memory, processes, and things like that. So for me, it's like I said, comes into both those areas and kind of fits in with FinOps at the top, cloud cost management kind of in the middle, and then profiling maybe at the sort of the lowest level of that, literally, because you kind of very deep into the actual application. So the likes of Polar Signals was one of the kind of startup companies in that thing. But I mean, I dug up stuff from Dynatrace. I've dug up stuff from Datadog, around profiling as well. So it's certainly something that people are aware of. Sorry, Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, no, one that's been around for quite a while, and I think probably have the most detailed approach. This is Vertana. They were the old virtual instruments. When they started by instrumenting, SANs and actual storage devices, and then moved up to servers, and have moved, further and further up the stack and into virtual environments, to become Vertana. And they spend a lot of time. I hadn't called it they didn't call it profiling. Perhaps they need to get on the thing and call it profile, because their reports around utilization are quite often the bedrock of what companies are or should be using in terms of what do I need to provision when I move to the cloud, when I do the
yeah, and I would expect that to be traditionally the APM kind of space. I would expect that from APM to also, mentioned App Dynamics, Turbonomic, and so on. And that's kind of the space I would, or the function I would expect, the feature I would expect kind of from APM. But profiling, I don't know, it just seems to have this extra, the cost element to it as well, which I think is quite interesting. It's kind of, bringing maybe what APM used to do with cloud cost management and FinOps and whatever, and kind of, offering both those sides. I don't know. But certainly an interesting one to look at. And I was absolutely fascinated when we did that. And so much that I actually got the founder and CEO of Polar Signals to actually do a talk with me at the Open Source Summit. So again, that will be coming out. That's definitely coming out next year. So look out for that interview with the guy from Polar Signals as well. All right. So any other tech innovations? We mentioned kind of quantum computing briefly. I've certainly picked up on it. IBM has kind of been around, that for a while. And T-Systems actually, interestingly enough, is a partner of IBM in the QC space. If you actually want to get a little bit more on that in terms of an intro to quantum computing and so on, have a look at Fahim Safdar's YouTube channel called Cloud Native FM, because one of our guys at T-Systems actually did an intro video with him recently about quantum computing. They've kind of gone into a lot of detail in regards to that. But yeah, Google was kind of the more recent one. There was announcements from them, but they seem to kind of make a little bit of a breakthrough around the error correction problem, which is something that's kind of maligned that sort of whole quantum computing space for a while. And in fact, there was a lot of talks I picked up on saying QC can't go any further forward unless this problem with error correction is actually tackled.
Yeah, that's true, and there have been a number of breakthroughs on error correcting, and but they're sort of gradual. They've not fixed the error correction problem. They've just managed to get the qubits to be less prone to error than they were before. So again, the view is that you're looking towards 2030 before you get real, full-blown quantum compute capability. But there are interim steps. There are processes that can be used with existing quantum computers already, and I think that's quite interesting to see where that one goes.
Yeah,
I'm started out life as a physicist, but I struggle to understand all the quantum computing stuff, and but it feels
you're a classical physicist. That's why you're not a quantum physicist.
I was supposed to be, but that's how I ended up working for IBM rather than going on to be the world's preeminent elementary particle physicist. Couldn't handle the maths. But I mean, my gut feel is that we're making steady progress, and I actually think that there may be major breakthroughs before 2030.
Okay, all right,
interesting.
Well,
okay,
hopefully we're still around in 2030 to have that.
We can come back for a Christmas special again,
Definitely.
and talk about it.
There's one other kind of innovation area we haven't mentioned, and I can't for the life of me remember the examples, but I've seen a couple of really interesting kind of AI-powered drug discovery projects that have been kind of quite remarkable. I just can't remember the ones that I looked at in the year, but I think that's an area that we'll hear more of next year as well.
Yeah, and I think this is what I was kind of saying, and I wrote an article on this earlier this year, following kind of some of the views that the likes of Gartner kind of put out, and some of the people that I've kind of talked on, places like LinkedIn and stuff like that, is around the idea of AI, and generative AI specifically. Enterprises making more use of it if it's application specific, if it's customized and it's specific to doing one thing, rather than a co-pilot or a ChatGPT kind of approach. And I think that's kind of maybe where we'll see a lot more focus from vendors going forward. And these kind of SaaS solutions, AI SaaS sort of solutions will start maybe coming in next year. Okay. Right, next category, which is cloud winners and losers. Unfortunately, I have to say I have more losers than winners in this particular category.
Wonder why?
So, Yeah, so I think it's been a slightly gloomy year as far as that's kind of concerned. Um, but yeah, maybe David, we can start with you if you have any thoughts on this at all.
I guess, I mean, we're going to cover AI later on, but obviously
Yeah,
the likes of
yeah, AI is proliferating through
yeah,
all of
yeah,
our
which
categories.
is
So,
kind of inevitable. But
yeah,
I would
inevitable. Yeah.
say that that the likes of Microsoft and Google in particular, kind of focusing on AI integration into what they do.
Mm.
That they've strides being made, and it's only going to get more and more as we go into next year. But that's one of the things that I'd pick out.
Yeah, excellent.
And
Well,
I think, all three hyperscalers have benefited from the impact of AI in terms of the business that's coming their way, certainly in terms of training the models, but probably even on the inference side as well. So, you know, despite everybody talking about repatriation, the growth of cloud is still huge. So I
yeah,
mean, it's and certainly AI has had that impact on it.
mm,
So
yeah,
the three big hyperscalers, got, and we, I think it was it December where we were looking, what about the alternative clouds? Is
mm,
what,
yes,
and the reality is they're not coming anywhere close to denting, that. So the winners again, in genuine cloud space are the three hyperscalers. They got to be.
yeah,
I mean,
And I think I don't know if you guys have seen this book, which I've just bought but not read yet.
okay,
But I mean, this is really talking about the fight between Microsoft and OpenAI and Google and DeepMind, and
mm,
so within the three hyperscalers, I think there's a particular battle between two of them to in terms of
I'm sure
AI
I'm sure
supremacy.
AWS has, had its own plans as well. They
I'm
won't they
sure,
won't
yeah.
allow the other two to
yeah,
together. So that was fine. And in the same vein, they're not cloud per se, but their impact on cloud computing. I mean, NVIDIA has been the big winner of the year.
yeah, yeah, definitely, yeah.
Absolutely biggest.
Absolutely, and yeah, and they're kind of more pervasive than just in the cloud because they obviously do their stuff in the
Yeah.
in data centers, and partners are kind of wanting their staff to put in their own data centers and so on. And just kind of sticking to the winners front before we get all negative and doom and gloomy on the loser side. Um, I thought that actually AWS, and I was at the recap earlier this year, back in March, I think they did in London. So I attended that, and there was an exec briefing event as well, which I attended before the recap. But mostly at the recap, I saw some really fantastic demos of AWS Bedrock. So I thought that Bedrock as a playground for LLM models and stuff like that is a fantastic idea. It's almost like an app store, for LLMs. So you can actually go there and choose the model that you want, tell it what you want it to do. They're all FM as a service, so they're all pre-trained already. So you can kind of just talk to the model and use it for whatever application you want. If you want to API into it, you can do. If you want to SDK into it, you can do. There's all sorts of things going on. And obviously they updated that at reInvent only a couple of weeks ago. Again, we did a live stream on that on the channel, guys. So do check out the live stream with the playlist of all the live streams. There's lots of announcements, of course, SageMaker and Amazon Q kind of doing the ChatGPT equivalent as well. But Bedrock, I thought for me was probably the kind of the best update. So looking at that old, I don't know if you guys know or remember the TikTok Intel TikTok sort of strategy of 1 year new stuff, next year is enhancement of the of the previous stuff that was announced. I think this was which one is it? I can't remember now whether it's the tick or talk, but it was the year of improvements anyway. That's the point. So Bedrock got lots of updates, which I thought were really good. It was like a studio and various other things as well. So yeah, so you're quite right in terms of AWS bringing in a lot more and kind of trying to fight its corner as well. Now, whether it's going to be any more successful, I don't know. The OpenAI / Microsoft sort of partnership is just, I think, it seems to be unbeatable at the moment. And again, I will mention in the AI category, if we if you still have anything fresh to talk about in the AI category, how kind of effective OpenAI's really approach has been this year. Okay, right. So yeah, let's move on to. Oh yes, we have the losers to talk about. Paul, I'll let you start with that one.
I was going to take your piece of the way. I mean, the one that springs immediately to mind is Intel.
Yes.
Intel are the big losers of the year.
Yeah.
Their strategy around, they've been outflanked by NVIDIA in the sort of, GPU space completely, and even, AMD and others and ARM particularly have made inroads into their traditional, data center space too. And then obviously with the upheaval, with Pat going, and really you sort of look, and everywhere you look, you say the road back for them is long and hard. I mean, the fact that the American government has.
You think there is a road back?
Well, one of the challenges,
because Qualcomm is hovering around.
Well, Qualcomm, well, exactly. We talked.
They're circling the corpse, aren't they?
Qualcomm could be there. The US government will need a foundry capability in the States. There is no doubt about that. Whether they, do some more with Taiwan Computer, I can never get the
TSMC.
TSMC. I always get the letters the wrong way around. TSMC, or they go with Samsung or Qualcomm. They need a foundry capability. Whether Qualcomm then think, hey, it's worth buying Intel, because obviously Intel were the recipients of quite a large sum of money from the American government. Who knows? But I mean, they talk about a company that seems to have missed the boat. I mean, you could almost put them in the sort of Boeing category of companies that should have been, serenely moving on and yet somehow got fat, happy, and lazy.
Yeah.
Better example, I think, is Nokia and highlighting that particular, innovation. They managed to lose their way in 18 months and disappear. And I think Intel are in danger of going that way too.
Yeah, I mean it's such a big company that you feel it might not disappear completely. But as you say, if Qualcomm take them, who knows what happens to the brand? I mean, because the brand is becoming tarnished, I think is the best way of describing that.
Yeah.
So even buying it, Qualcomm may just, if a Qualcomm went for it, they might decide they don't need the brand, they need some of the capabilities, but they don't need the brand.
Yeah, yeah, and we covered again. We covered Intel extensively, and I think that was the proper December episode as well of Cloud State of Play. I think we called it Intel with woes inside. I think that's what that was the title.
Yes.
Yeah, with woes inside. Yeah. So that was the title. Actually, somebody else, I did pick up somebody else saying something quite similar there with playing on the old Intel Inside thing. So yes, that was, I think, definitely an issue. And yeah, and again, if you guys want to look at this, Paul and I can go into a lot of detail in that. Check out the episode. Thanks to the December episode that we covered that. Again, will be links in the description of the video. Okay, any other losers?
One which, just because the headline I saw, which was a masterclass in self-destruction. Can you guess who it was? X, Twitter.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I mean,
you think so?
Oh, completely. I mean, a flight of advertisers disappearing from there, number of users collapsing the way it has done. I mean, Musk gets some things right. And if we had a slightly broader category, the ability of SpaceX to catch a rocket in those clouds,
that's amazing.
I mean, absolutely brilliant. But my God, he destroyed Twitter.
It's only really the fact that most major news outlets still actually often publish a story first on X that's keeping some legitimacy to it. If that wasn't the case, it would be gone.
Yeah. So I couldn't resist, and I'm surprised you haven't had another pop at VMware in this section. But anyway.
I think we've done VMware to that. There is a couple other ones I want to come back with. Yeah, David.
If I just want to have a brief mention with CrowdStrike, because I think that's a scenario where we would have expected them to be in the loser category from the size of the reputational damage that might have been, and the fact that they're actually they're in recovery mode and going in the right direction is actually really quite surprising.
Yeah, and I think also because we have we try to cater in all the categories for everything, so somebody's going to bound to end up in one of the categories somewhere. So yeah, I think the only point on Twitter or X is that he I think he slacked the workforce by 80% and is still up and running. So for me, it's I would probably push back a little bit on in regards to that. As to kind of how it kind of progresses, some advertisers have gone. I think he was on the something forum, some business forum or something, and he didn't really seem to care much about those people leaving. So some people actually have come back. I can't remember who it was who one of the papers said, some news outlet said, we're off, we're not going to do that, and then look, they're back again. So we'll see. Maybe we can do another review of that for next year to see how they progress. Okay. Any other losers? No. Okay. Okay. So let me mention a couple because I thought it would be quite interesting. And these are, I think, some we've covered and some we haven't necessarily. I think Meta just seems to be nowhere when it comes to AI. They're kind of doing Llama. They're releasing all this stuff. They're pretending it's open source. There's a lot of pushback in terms of what their definition of open source is on these models versus kind of the community's understanding of open source. And I think they're getting nowhere. Their reason for open sourcing stuff is clearly so they can create an ecosystem that's within their sort of realm, and it just doesn't seem to be really working. I mean, sure, people are kind of using it, and hey, it's great on the benchmarks and things like that. But actually, whether it's achieving anything is another matter. Honorable mention to Apple with their goggle thing. I don't even know what the name is called. So that's still something that's not really taken off. I don't think it will ever take off. And then a couple of other ones I had was, so what was the other one? Oh yeah, so I mean, we obviously mentioned kind of CrowdStrike, but not necessarily in as we said in this particular category. And maybe positively because they put their hand up quite quickly on that. I think the other one which I would like to mention is the whole post office and Fujitsu scandal. Paul, you and I again covered this quite extensively in the February episode of this year. There's an unfiltered episode if you want to kind of just watch that particular discussion. That's available on the channel as well, so do check that out. But otherwise, Classic to Play Feb edition, Feb episode, we covered this extensively. And the inquiry just finished, apparently. And I will just kind of give you a little bit of an update on that because I thought it was quite interesting. So this is around the Horizon IT system scandal that happened at the UK Post Office. For those who kind of don't know the details, again, we'll be providing stuff in the description of the video, so do check that out. And there was an article I picked up just yesterday, actually, from the BBC on the final day of the Post Office inquiry. And they called back Paula Reynolds, who was the chief executive of the Post Office between 2012 and 2019 in the public hearing. There was all sorts of mentions from the lawyer saying there has not been any nothing to show that she acted in bad faith, and there was lots of apparently there was from the gallery there was lots of gasps, and then she apparently kind of said, well, I wasn't informed by a lot of this stuff. My team did not inform me, so it's kind of threw her team under the bus. and that she claimed that that her team didn't tell her about all the things that are happening. I thought that was quite funny because all she had to do was turn on her television and she'd see every month there was something going on for the last 20 years when it comes to the post office. And then she told the inquiry that her senior team failed to inform, this is the BBC, so her senior team failed to inform her of key information, but said she has no desire to point the finger at others. So she actually said that, and then she said, yeah, but I'm not going to point the finger at anybody. And apparently that there were groans about the first part of that from the public eye, and then there was laughter at the second part of that of that statement that she made as well. And to be honest, I'm not really surprised. There were nearly 300 witnesses called for the inquiry, 780 witness statements, and dealt with more than 2 million pages of disclosure. And this has been going on, since September 2020, this inquiry. And it's just completed now, 5 years, pretty much 4 years, 5 years later. So I think both Fidgets and the post office and all the people that were kind of involved with that, absolute, complete losers on this one, definitely.
100%
Can't argue with that. whether it's something to do with cloud is another matter, but
well, it's not cloud. I mean, it's kind of it's generally speaking. Yeah, generally speaking, I think it's something that we kind of I certainly wanted to highlight because we covered it earlier this year, but I think it's quite important when it comes to kind of just IT and in general.
Yeah.
And I
David's earlier comment about CrowdStrike and transparency, the lack of transparency from both the post office and Fujitsu, stunning.
Yeah.
Absolutely stunning.
Yeah, indeed.
And learning. Yeah,
and there's lots more to discuss. But apparently there was a previous system to Horizon as well, which was also causing exactly the same problems apparently. So
no, it's true. It's true. Yeah. I only heard that a couple of weeks ago. It came out in the inquiry talking about that.
Yes, it was called Capture.
Yes,
the system was called Capture.
I mean, Unisys got its name in the press as a result of that, but fortunately, Unisys only provided the hardware to that, not the software.
Lucky escape, Unisys.
In fact, we bid for the Horizon program at Unisys.
Yeah, you did mention that, I think. Yes.
Again.
Yeah. Wow. But yeah, I mean, again, the lawyers for the sub postmaster stated, and this is obviously quite serious point, is that people were ruined, people were bankrupted, people were imprisoned, there were atrocities, miscarriages of justice, and people died.
The whole thing was a disgrace.
And I think he put the point back to the ex-chief executive and said whether the board and the executive knew of these injustices from the start is an irrelevant diversion. And I couldn't agree more.
And it's one of those things where the numbers mean something in the context that why would this many postmasters decide to actually try and defraud you in exactly the same way? This
is exactly what we said.
In their hundreds, it's kind of like, hang on a minute.
Yeah, exactly. This is what Paul and I were saying back in Feb. And if you watch the video, guys, you'll see that I'm sitting there saying, common sense should tell you we can't have that many crooks in the company. Maybe a few bad apples a year, sure. But over 900 over like 20 years or something. It's like, come on.
How could that happen?
Exactly. I must be really unlucky. It shows to be the chief exec for the worst company, the most crooked company in the world. But come on. Crazy. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. The other, just one last point on this, because it's really important, I think, is the open source vendors that have changed their licenses. I think they're absolutely complete losers. They're breaking up this whole mantra of and the community spirit of of the community of open source and so on. I won't mention any names. Paul, you and I covered this again.
We covered it.
April episode. I think I covered it with Same Saptar when you were away, but we have discussed it in other episodes as well. But again, I'll put some descriptions in the or links in the video descriptions for you guys to have a look at. But I think what's happening there is just a complete disaster. It's put the cat among the pigeons, and it's just really causing a lot of upset. To the point where, as we said earlier, with things like HashiCorp Terraform, it's been forked. The Linux Foundation is now supporting OpenTofu, which is the equivalent project for Terraform. So yeah, not a good place to be. Hey, if you are enjoying the content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That would really help me out. Thank you. The fifth category is the tech updates and interesting solutions. What have you guys picked up on? Paul, maybe come to you first.
I mean, the one, and it's from one of my favorite companies, Thousand Eyes. They just literally delivered general availability of what they call Cloud Insights a couple of weeks ago, beginning of December. They mentioned it. They did that at invent, AWS reInvent. So, and you know, you and I have talked about the challenge of cloud networking and the ephemeral and rapidly changing and software-based environment that sort of defies the ability of old monitoring tools to see what's going on. We talked about the way in which, you know, through various open source tools, you can put your own solutions together. And actually what Thousand Eyes have done is used their own experience of transitioning their monolithic application that ran in their own data centers. Starting back in about 2019, they realized that they were going to have to go to the cloud because it was getting too big and too difficult to manage. And they literally re-architected their system to run cloud native on AWS. But they discovered in the process that they lost visibility into traffic going across the public cloud network, the public cloud network, you know, the actual networks of the hyperscalers. So they set about, basically pulling stuff together, using open source tools, using their own capabilities, and have come up with a service. It's AWS only at the moment, but they've got Azure next in the pipeline and GCP after that. So you will be able, once you've given, as a customer, you give your credentials, your AWS credentials to Cloud Insights, and it goes away and it maps the topology of what you're doing. Right. And it knows a lot of the infrastructure. So and it uses Terraform and it uses various other tools to map. And they can now literally map the services through the network of AWS. And interestingly enough, it was one of the benefits for them that came out of the Cisco, the fact they were bought by Cisco in 2020, is that it opened up communication, much broader communication with AWS, because a lot of AWS data centers use Cisco equipment. So there was a bigger relationship there, and they were able to get more cooperation from AWS. So the level of granularity you get from things like CloudWatch were not good enough. So there is a fully featured ability now for you to see where and how your services are going, and are they running into trouble, and what's causing the issues inside the public cloud. And as I've been doing infrastructure monitoring now for the best part of 7 or 8 years and looking at the market, and I've always seen this gap. I think this is closing. I mean, they closed the AWS gap, they'll close the Microsoft one, and they'll close the GCP one. The challenge then will be the inter-cloud movements between the three, because I'm sure there'll be some challenges in there. But it's moved a long way to closing what I saw was a visibility gap. So from my perspective as an analyst looking at what I call hybrid infrastructure management, this is a big step forward.
Yeah, and we covered that. I think it was again in the previous episode of Class 6, where we talked about cloud networking in general, cloud network management and aviatrics and people like that in that space. So yeah, and this was, I think, the crucial point, Paul, and correct me if I'm wrong, was the end-to-end visibility. This was not something that was possible before and not been achieved before.
Yeah, correct.
And now you kind of have that now.
They've now got that, and I think it's a tremendous move forward. Given how much traffic is going through public cloud, and assuring the board that hey, that application is going to run well. You've got this gap in the middle, you don't know.
Yeah, and also, as you know, I think as we were talking in the episode where we discussed it, it was the inability to have that end-to-end, not having visibility of everything, of where your packets are going, beyond your sort of confined space of the cloud, of the public cloud, for example.
One thing I hadn't realized, because I was thinking, is the same problem on the public internet? And the answer is no, because the public internet works with fixed IP addresses. Whereas they don't inside the cloud. It's all software defined. It's all, so they generate IP addresses on the fly and then take them down again on the fly. So it's almost impossible. So it's how they got over that problem. Really interesting. And while you can use open source tools to put together, cook your own solution, God, it's like, why roll your own when you've got this service now available? It is a software as a service too, and I just think that was it's close to my heart, because I've been following that market now for about 7 or 8 years, and it's always when you talk to network management vendors or you talk to people who provide full stack observability, wonderful. You go, yeah, but it's not quite, is it? And they're slightly sort of you guess, it's by guess and by God the minute it comes out of the beyond the firewall at AWS before it comes out the other end into the public internet or to your own enterprise network. That bit in the middle you couldn't see. Yeah.
David, anything from you?
I think mine's probably some of the obvious ones, like Azure OpenAI service and Google Cloud Vertex AI. Those kind of tools where you can actually start to play around and develop your own language models and really start to use AI in all sorts of creative ways to help your business. So it's those kinds of things that have popped out at me this year.
Yeah, I mean the Bedrock one I mentioned, and I saw I just got to give you an idea of sort of some of the capabilities, and I'm sure I'm purely merely scratching the surface here. But at that recap that I was in, the guys did a demo of Amazon Q. So it was actually not even Bedrock, I think, at the time. I think it was Q they were demonstrating, and they took some old Java code that somebody had, and then they said, okay, I need this converted to the latest version, to Amazon Q, with all the dependencies and runtimes and blah blah that you need, and it just converted the code automatically. I mean, it was just like a half a second. It did the conversion. So you can imagine for customers who are kind of migrating a ton of those types of apps, trying to put those into the cloud and run them in a microservice, or whatever, or a container. You can see how that kind of useful would be. The Bedrock one I saw was even better. They started with a graphic, a JPEG of a very high level AWS design for an app, 2-tier or 3-tier, whatever application. And they told the model, they chose one of the models from the Bedrock playground. I think they chose Anthropic's Claude or something like that. It was the Haiku model, so the SLM, not a LLM. And then they said, okay, what can you see on this JPEG? I'm going to upload the JPEG. So they prompted the model. I'm going to upload the JPEG. Can you tell me what you can see? And the model said, oh yeah, that's a AWS design. And you got this app, and it's connecting here, and it goes there, and there's a backend database, blah blah blah. And there's a web interview, web UI, whatever. Okay. Right, so that's the now, can you convert that to a CloudFormation script, which is essentially AWS's tool for infrastructure as code? And the model said yes, and it automatically converted that into a CloudFormation script. And then they said, can you convert that again to a Terraform script? And then the model, again, converted it to, to a Terraform script. So you kind of went from a back of an envelope sketch sort of thing, in that JPEG, to a description and to two layers or two filters of code. Now, obviously, that code's not going to be necessarily optimized. It's not perfect for your environment. Probably doesn't have all your stuff that you want in there and so on. But the skeleton, the starting point, was essentially there. And obviously, as you train that model and customize, for it to do exactly what you want, that's perfect. That was really cool. I thought that was a really good domain. That was a webinar that I attended, I think back in the summer of this year on Bedrock. So I think that was kind of my, my pick on those. Now, sorry, go ahead, David. Yeah.
I mean those are fantastic examples, and it actually highlights, how brilliant that's going to be in a positive way for the digital transformation of my organization to do things quicker and faster and the like. But it also has major implications for the way development teams work and for the number of developers that I'm going to need going forwards as well. So it's fascinating.
Yeah. Indeed. So just one other point in this sort of tech updates and interesting stuff that's been happening. It's kind of somewhere between, again, AI proliferating everywhere. So it's kind of somewhere between sort of tech updates and AI. Is there seems to be a storm brewing around what's known as the open source initiative. So the open source initiative, the OSI, has been trying to, for some reason, trying to provide an open source AI definition. And apparently there's a huge pushback on this at the moment. There was an article I picked up on the news stack. Again, we'll drop some links in the video description for you. But it's basically OSI's recent attempt to define open source AI. Now, this obsession by the open source community to have all AI models open source, it's just I just find that ridiculous and unfathomable. It's just really silly, because I attended the State of Open conference earlier this year in StuCon, which I again covered for the channel. There's lots of stuff on that, and I think there's a review on, or there will be a review on that as well on the channel too. And in that conference, there was just everybody was, and it was sort of definitely this is around February of this year, so AI is kind of still quite relatively new. All this kind of model explosion hasn't happened yet, but there was just an absolute bewilderment to the point of panic about sort of AI and what does that mean for open source, and does that mean that models are now going to write code, and GitHub Copilot is out and Stack Overflow have got their own, so and where do we go from here, sort of thing. So I picked up a lot of that sort of panic discussion, and I think this is potentially somewhere around that. I don't know enough about the details, but there's a lot of pushback on this, and I'm just finding this whole obsession by the open source community to control AI, to kind of say, oh yeah, it's open source, then look, hey, we can run this model on Kubernetes now, and I can containerize it. And like, so what? I don't care. OpenAI, has been doing closed source models. Thank you very much. I think they've only open sourced one of their small models, but all their stuff is closed source, and they're getting on swimmingly. Thank you. They don't really necessarily need to open source stuff. The people who are open sourcing stuff like Meta, it's because they're desperate to try to get in on the act. That's the only reason they're open sourcing. And as we said, even their open sourcing sort of approach is questionable. So I don't know what's going on with this, but this, OSI is kind of trying to put the definition together. There's been an uproar in the industry around that. Open UK has actually come into the discussion as well. So Amanda Brock and others have actually kind of been, trying to really, I think, back the OSI sort of definition. But there's a huge pushback on this, and the lack of requirements for, this article I picked up on says, oh, there's a lack of requirements for open training data, flexibility and future understanding. Some argue that the definition leaves too much room for future changes and lacks clarity. There's also all sorts of pushback, and I think it just seems to be ill-advised, ill-conceived kind of thing that you're trying to do. And like I said, the basis of it is, why are you trying to do this? Why are you trying to categorize AI, generative AI, all these LLM open source models, whatever? Why can't you put them all into open source? Why don't you just let the vendors kind of make a decision, right? So anyway, just a quick rant on that, because I just find that quite bewildering, that what they're trying to do here. Okay, have we done that one to death? Shall we move on to the AI one?
Sounds good to me.
How long have you got?
Yeah, not very long. Okay, so yeah, so anything really, I mean, we've mentioned a lot around AI. So for me, really, in this sort of generative AI, sort of runaway success, it's really open AI. For me, it's what they've done this year. The models that they've released from GPT-4o to O1 Strawberry, which is the recent kind of reasoning model that they've had, and with that announcement that they made, I think back in May, which was strategically positioned the day before Google I/O conference was on. They announced GPT-4o in less than 30 minutes, and I think that announcement had more impact than the 9 hours of announcements that Google made on the following day, on Tuesday of that week. So for me, it's definitely open AI. I mean, yeah, we've had models and we've discussed open source models and blah blah models and all the benchmarking that's going on around that, the AI race, the arms race, around AI and models like that. I think that's fine. People are going to do that, but with it, you kind of take those and put those into an enterprise. I don't know. And again, it goes back to, how do you want to use AI? But Paul, what's kind of your take on the AI space? Anything that you picked up on?
Grinch, I think, by the sound of it here, because when I saw this category and sort of GenAI runaway success. I mean, there's been a lot of hype. My own take on it is, will we look back on 2024 as peak hype for AI? Is it now going to be in, slow descent into the trough of disillusion before it comes out the other side? I mean, David, shaking his head. And my take on that is, we've talked about hallucinations. There was the incredible story the other day about the BBC having to complain to Microsoft because Microsoft News had attributed a story about the Mangione, the sort of killer who's just been arraigned in the States, taking his own life and attributing it to the BBC. And that was them using their AI tool, so again, hallucination from the AI. And the other is, we've seen various reports coming out that says what's the quality of the code that's being put together by AI, and it's clever, it's really good, but there's still an awful lot of faults in it. And why are the faults in it? Because you have to be the prompt has to be right, the input has to be right. And just my sense is that, the whole issue around guardrails for AI, the whole issue around hallucinations, the whole issue around, how do we ensure both quality and lack of bias and all those sort of issues, will just get a slight readjustment, yes, there's been really clever things happening, but there is a wonderful TED talk, and I'll send you the link. It's only about 12 minutes from somebody who, a lady who, I can't remember her name now, but I'll dig it out. It is absolutely fantastic. I mean, she's a real expert in the field, and she talks brilliantly. And in 12 minutes, she gives the reasons, why I think there's yes, it's absolutely fantastic tools, but it ain't going to replace humans anytime soon.
Yeah.
And just be careful about what happens. And I'll provide the link into this. Very. So that's my take.
Yeah.
Well, I think I was the one shaking your head. I mean, there is no doubt that what you've said about the ethical concerns around use of AI and getting the data right, and the fact that there's in the data that we've got, that a lot of that we've started with ChatGPT has got an awful lot of bias in the data that uses, and in our tech space, we're not very good on balancing gender and a bunch of other things. So there are all those issues around AI that we absolutely have to sort out, and we absolutely haven't spent enough time on over the last 2 years that this has started. But my personal belief is that it's not, we're not at the peak of the hype. We are just at a phase where whether you call what happened in 2023 to now and going forwards, whether you call it the fifth industrial revolution or you call it the AI era, doesn't really matter. I think that these are, we're in the middle of a significant transformational change, and yes, there is hype around it. So 90% of the new AI apps that you see people launching are actually just put in a different wrapper around what OpenAI and DeepMind and the like have developed, and there's not as much useful new stuff being developed as there should be. But we're at the start of something different and something new, and AI will combine with things like quantum computing and things like the metaverse and the like, and really change the nature of business and the nature of the way we create stuff going forwards. I think we're just at the start of it, and it's not going to fall into a
I don't disagree with any of that. I actually don't disagree with that. I think I disagree with the fact that at the moment it's sort of, the runaway success is going to be repeated next year, and I think we're going to be in one of those classic, it's going to take twice as long to get to real usefulness as we originally thought, but then it'll do things we never even envisaged. It's the classic IT, conundrum, and therefore, I think just a level of sort of, hold on a minute, guys, there's some things to sort out here. We talked about data, and you're right. I mean, there's two issues around data too. One is that if you're looking at using RAG techniques, or you're looking at using sort of small LMs, to develop on corporate data, a recent CIO survey came out with the fact that 65% of CIOs didn't think they had the data in any sort of state to deal with it. Whereas about 80% of the business execs, the senior execs in the business, were all going, hey, we're going to do this stuff on corporate data. And so there's a big gap in data quality. Never mind the fact that as well, and you may have been in on some of the Blur discussions around atrophying of LLMs. If they keep using their existing data, they become self-fulfilling prophecies. They start, and all those sort of things. So again, how do I keep up refreshing that? All those sort of. So that's all. When Richard was going runaway success, I thought, it's brilliant stuff, but just be careful.
Yeah. So actually, what I should have said. So I wasn't saying generative AI is a runaway success. I was saying any runaway successes in the generative AI space. That's really what I meant by the category. So I'm not correcting myself. That is actually what the category was.
Like a true therapist, nicely spun.
Exactly. So that's really what I meant. And I think, certainly, yes, 2024, we've had a lot of good stuff come out in the technology, in what the tech can do. But, speaking to somebody yesterday, who's just finished his PhD, by the way. I'm sorry, finished his master's in all this sort of AI stuff. I think we both agreed that we're not the models aren't really improving anymore. Sure, they're getting faster, they're getting bigger, they're getting wider, they're having more categories, so they're multimodal and things like that. So you can put video in and get text out. You can put audio in and get video out, whatever. You can do all of that kind of stuff now. And that's all fantastic capabilities. And I think the recent one I saw was all the models and how showing somebody cutting a steak on LinkedIn. So they all generated their video based on that. So they tested all the models, OpenAI, Sora, and all the other ones. But what point being is that the intelligence is not really getting any further. You can take in more parameters, increase the billions of parameters and so on. You can, like I said, make the model faster. You can make it multimodal and so on. But in terms of a leap in intelligence, it's not really doing that. They're very good at, reading your stuff and responding to it, but they're not kind of very good at, kind of the intelligence and the spontaneity and stuff like that, which obviously humans do. So I don't think we can kind of get to that point. And certainly the current models have kind of reached a plateau, I think, in terms of what they can do. We can tweak them and make them faster, like I said, and so on, but not really increase their intelligence to kind of, and that's kind of, I guess, the next leap that we're waiting for. 2024 for me has certainly been not just that kind of technical side, but the enterprise side has been, the year of proof of concepts, the year of piloting AI and generative AI specifically. So we're going to see how long that runs into next year, and then what is the result of that. So I'm quite eager to see if we're going to do like likes of Gartner and so on, IDC, to come up with some stuff to say, yes, everybody tried it and they think it's too expensive. I can't hire 50 data scientists and ML ops engineer, so I'm going to go AI SaaS. I'm going to put all my data into a SaaS model that somebody already built for my sector, market sector or something like that. So yeah, so I think we'll see what happens. I think with that, and then whereas open source with OSI thing again, we'll see what happens with that. Okay. Any other stuff? Sorry, David. Yeah, go ahead.
And all I was going to say is that Paul's absolutely right. That if you like, the foundation of getting it right is all about data quality and making sure you've got the right data. That's what all the enterprises and the organizations should be focusing on to get this right.
Yeah. So I think I think that again they're kind of hitting the brick wall of publicly available data, and that's why people are talking about synthetic data as the kind of the next frontier for that. And actually, I saw a little bit of this at Big Data London, the show that Paul, you and I attended. So again, there's talks on that coming out. We're going to do a review of that show. We've done a talk as well with Enterprise DB, EDB as well. So look out for that. That will be all on the channel as well. But yeah, there was talk about kind of, there was a number of companies there kind of offering that kind of capability of, working around sort of synthetic data at the show as well. Okay, any other honorable mentions? Did we forget anything on anybody's wish list, Christmas list of stuff that we want to talk about?
I think we've emptied the sack.
I think we have. Pretty much. There's always something more to talk about, but I think we're pretty much there.
I just think as one last act, David should stand up.
Yes, please.
Right. You see, this is
perfect.
I've got a proper
mine just repeats, so it's not. So I've got some
date bit at the start.
Yeah, I've got some snowmen on mine, but otherwise they'll repeat.
But your David's was particularly,
I forgot to put this on.
Part in the Christmas spirit.
I forgot to put this on.
Very good.
I had one with ears. It was a step too far. I put it on.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys very much. I really appreciate your time. It's been a fantastic talk. As always, covered so much stuff. Just learned so many new things, and just hopefully had fun. Hope you guys had fun. Doing the talk as well. As we said, everything that we talked about, and then some of the links and stuff will be in the description of the video. And yeah, we'll be back for more stuff. Obviously in the new year, Paul will be back in to do some more fast state of play stuff. And Paul, David, I'll probably see you around for some stuff as well. We'll probably do some more things together. We've got actually a couple of talks that we will be probably lining up for the new year. Thank you guys all for watching. Hope you have a fantastic Christmas, and we will catch you soon. Bye for now.
Bye.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to support me. You may also want to check out some of the other videos on this channel. Bye for now.